Hello, a very good evening to all of you who are watching me. My name is Vikash Mishra, and I have been guiding students preparing for civil services for last 20 years. And today I'm going to discuss about some of the questions which appeared today in paper 2 of General Studies. And I wish all the best to those who have written mains or for the rest of their papers. And I also wish all the best to those who are preparing to write mains in the years to come. So I got the questions on WhatsApp, so I'll pick up the questions one by one, and I will try to give my inputs that how the candidates are supposed to tackle those questions. One thing I noticed as compared to previous years, this year the questions are slightly more direct in nature, and one contention, one belief, what I have always maintained as far as the current paradigms and the changes in the structure of the questions are concerned, that polity part is a very one of the most relevant areas if somebody is preparing for civil services, and the incorporation of current developments. If the candidate is keeping abreast of all the current developments, what is happening in the field of constitution and polity, brushing up all the current affairs, they would certainly have an edge while writing the answer in the examination hall. But here this year, the questions are more direct. It doesn't require much introspection, and one thing always stands valid that a lot of current features have been taken by those who have framed the questions for Indian polity as well as the international relation. But right now, my focus would be only on to tackle the questions of Indian polity. Maybe I call it Corona effect. The Corona effect, the way the Corona has affected, created an impact all across the world in various spectrums of our life. The question answers, the examinations cannot remain untouched or unaffected. So the first question that I'm going to take up is that probably this is about constitutional morality. So I've got the questions on WhatsApp. The question reads like this: constitutional morality is rooted in the Constitution itself and is founded on its essential facets. Explain the doctrine of constitutional morality with the help of relevant judicial decisions. I was expecting this question to come because the constitutional morality has been tossed around a lot during last couple of years. Particularly, the entire nation woke up to this new concept. See, it is not a very old. It is not a very new concept. It is an old concept, but the electronic media and the print media tossed it around a lot during those Sabrimala cases when the entire nation was debating whether the women should be allowed entry into the temples of Sabrimala or not. So, if we divide the words constitution and the morality, I don't need to elaborate upon the constitution, but the morality is your distinction, your ability to distinguish between good and bad, right and wrong. But when the constitution is added to this word morality, it has got a whole subjective and holistic interpretation which has to be seen in the totality of all the parameters or all the features which are existing in our constitution, like see the value orientation, like due process of law, rule of law, all those features which are very much there in our constitution, and all those stakeholders, whosoever are the stakeholders deriving their power and authority, deriving their benefits out of the provisions mentioned in the first 5 chapters of the constitution. So they all fall under the constitutional morality. The constitutional morality looks at the entire spectrum in a holistic manner, providing all sort of constitutional values and ideals which are enshrined right from our preamble to our first chapter, the fundamental rights and the duties, and many more features which come out of it. Like I would say the basic structure, like the secularism, the social equality, social equity, diversity, natural justice. So all those constitutional values, how the stakeholders are going to pay a huge respect, deep respect for all these ideals given in the constitution. These are to be discussed in this constitutional morality. So you can attempt to start like this, like Indian constitution has got multiple provisions, multiple chapters, the provisions which are enshrined as ideals and values of the constitutions, and all those stakeholders, how they are going to uphold the spirit of this constitution that falls under the definition of constitutional morality. The Sabrimala issue, now the morality has got multiple features like the social morality, political morality, ethical morality, even we have the economic morality. But few things, case studies I'm going to take up in order to add incentives to this answer. Like one, I have already told you about the Sabrimala case, other is the Naj Foundation cases, IPC 377. So, irrespective of their social economic positions, how environment and ambience is created within the ambit of the constitutions to create a just, fair, and equal society that would fall under the constitutional morality. These things have to be elaborated in this question number. Now I would go for the question number 2. Discuss the desirability of greater representation to women in the higher judiciary to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. As I told you earlier, here most of the questions which are coming out of this polity section, they are kind of generic in section. But here, generally, we have a debate about giving proper representation to women in almost all spheres of society and the structures. But here, the particular emphasis is being given to women in higher judiciary. So, see, there is a lot of debate that we should have more number of women judges at higher echelons of judiciary. But one question also comes to my mind that why not in the entire echelons, right from the top to the bottom, if more number of women are given representation in the judiciary, so they would be more empathetic, listening to the problems and the grievances faced by a major chunk of our population, the women population. So they those problems faced by them, the gender discriminations, discrimination at workplace, societal discrimination, various sort of stigmas attached to it. So all these things can be taken into consideration if we have the more number of women in higher judiciary. But here, the UPSC, the kind of question they ask, they gave you enough scope to let your imagination run wild, to give you enough freedom to think in a logical way. Here, the emphasis is given about desirability of greater representation to women in the higher judiciary. There are two parts of this question. Second part of the question is how this would ensure diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. See, if we talk about women as a whole, as a population, we have multiple number of states, we have multiple number of union territories. Our society is highly unstructured as far as the education, empowerment, the ability, the competency, and the opportunities given to the women across the country are involved. We don't have a uniformity. The same is applicable in terms of men also, but going by the facts and features that the society is having different sort of restrictions placed in different types of states and the societies and the within the blocks of the society, how the representation can be given to them to inspire. So if a woman judge comes to the top echelons of the society, of course they would be able to understand their problems in a much better perspective as compared to other judges. At the same time, our ratio of female judges as compared to many developing countries is much lesser. Even the Supreme Court has repeatedly stated in number of its judgments that this is the high time that we should have more number of representation, particularly in the High Courts and the Supreme Court, because more number of women-centric cases are coming up. The society is moving towards a very developmental phase in a very different way, where both the male and the females have to have a proper equivocal representation at the top echelons of judiciary. If you see the number of male judges we have at the top courts, it women find very insignificant number of women are there at the higher echelons. So this is a very generic question. So of course, more representation, more vocal representation, more addressing of issues in a much more logical way, inclusiveness. The society, in order to have give a holistic development to any society, we need to have more representation of women in the top echelons of judiciary. Again, I would say that you can wind up this question by saying that not only at the women, though it is essentially desirable that if the leadership is coming from the top also, We should, at the same time, simultaneously, we should also encourage leadership through the lower echelons of judiciary. So once we start stripping through from the top to bottom, from top to bottom to top, then we will have a system which would provide a complete model of development for the society as a whole. I'll take up the question number 3. This is a completely direct question about the recommendation of 14th Finance Commission of India, and which enabled the states to improve their fiscal position. See, one of the major issues between the center and the states have been the financial allocation. Some states have been clamoring for quite some time. I can recall number of episodes ever since independence. Some states which were ruled by the same party at the center, or some states which are ruled by the party different from the center, they all had been clamoring about that the center is always having an upper hand as far as the distribution of the resources are concerned, and the states are left to fend for themselves. So, one of the major issues here is the fiscal federalism, which I strongly believe that in order to have a successful and healthy and vibrant and robust federal structure, we need to have proper and equitable distribution of resources between the center and the states. Here, the question has been asked because, as you know, under Article 280, Finance Commission is constituted by the President of India with a chairman and 4 members, and all the members are given certain responsibilities to decide about the principles which should govern the financial provisions, devolution of financial provisions between the center and the states, the grants in aid provisions, any other financial matter which may help in smoothing or strengthening the economic relationship, fiscal relationship between the center and the states. So these are the questions where the students are supposed to keep the important features of finance commission, and this was a completely a direct question. What I can recall here at this point of time, that here this 14th financial commission basically came up with certain unique recommendation. Otherwise, most of the finance commissions have been kind of repeating the same thing time and again. But with the phase of developmental process getting into a very different and unique phase, in which the states are also becoming more vocal after this in terms of the resource allocation, the Finance Commission has also undergone a sea change in its perception to provide recommendation to smoothen the financial relationship between the center and the states. One of the major recommendation, basically what I feel has been borrowed by this 14th Finance Commission from the recommendation of one RBI Governors Committee on Fiscal Federalism, which says that this is the high time that the different allocations, the differences between the planned expenditure and the non-planned expenditure. Yeah, I remember it very well. C. Rangarajan Committee recommended that the distinction that we have in planned expenditure and the non-planned expenditure should be done away with. So 14th Finance Commission is said to have done this. They have differentiated between the planned expenditure and the non-planned expenditure, and they said that it's not necessary that Finance Commission should always recommend those expenditure which are based on planned and non-planned separately. This planned expenditure, after this dismantling of Planning Commission, it has been done away with, and now I'll take up the question number 4. To what extent, in your view, the Parliament is able to ensure accountability of the executive in India? As we all understand that ours is a parliamentary form of governance. Here, the Parliament is supreme because it represents the collective will of the people. But here, those students having opted public administration as an optional, they have got an edge, because this is coming polity question. But of course, this question could be handled by those who are studying public administration in a much better way, because there is a complete chapter on accountability and control. The legislative control, executive control, judicial control over executive, and the control of civil society. What I have noticed in the in totality of this polity section of GS mains civil services, that the questions are framed in a way, because we have got a question coming from the pressure groups, NGO, all those major developments which are taking place in the field of constitution and the polity. Students are supposed to keep abreast of all these developments, because the traditional stuff, you are not going to get those questions which are written like the functions of the president. These gone are the doors when these sort of questions used to be asked. There might be one or two questions coming straight from the constitution, but all these questions are the implied versions. My dear friends, I would again insist, reassert, repeatedly ask all of you to go through, to keep track of all the current developments. Like this can come under this public administration, but those who are not even from public administration, they can handle this question in a much better way. It says that Parliament is able to ensure accountability of the executive in India. What is accountability? Accountability stands for liable for action. The sense of responsibility and accountability have to go together. Those who have been given certain assignments as per the provisions of the constitution, as per the law of the land, whether they are carrying out those assigned responsibilities effectively, efficiently, with regards to efficacy, that has to be seen. Now, there are various tools available with Parliament to have control over executive. As we all know, that the basic job of legislature, the Parliament, is to frame laws. The executives cannot make laws. They have to go to the Parliament, they have to go to the state legislature, they have to look towards the legislature to make laws. The one thing. Secondly, various provisions starting from question hour, 0 hour, short hour discussion, half an hour discussion, adjournment motion, various budgetary provisions. Each and every money is accounted for. The executive does not have any direct access to the fund. Whatever is allocated by the legislature, that can only be spent by them. And then we have the debates. But here the question says that though the Parliament is having multiple tools to exert control over executive, but the soul of the question is talking about the effectiveness of those controls. Up to what extent these measures are effective? There are certain limitations of Parliament, there are certain limitations of legislature. That firstly, nowadays you can see that how many days in a year the whole house sits in session. Whatever days, limited days are there, they are disrupted by the due to certain regions which I don't want to cite here. Even I would ask all the candidates writing that they should not mention things which are apparently very obvious, because you are an apolitical person. You should not your answer should not reflect any kind of political affiliation. You have to be very, very careful about it. So the firstly, the Parliament does not have the time, does not have the expertise. The members representing the various sections of the society may not have the technical know-how to get into the details of those things. Another, the parliamentary standing committees, the parliamentary committees, like three important committees that we have: the estimates committee, the public accounts committee, and the committee on public undertakings. But these are considered a kind of post-mortem exercise. So they exercise some kind of control, but these are the post-mortem exercises. But all said and done, because of these measures, what Parliament exercises to control executive, our democracy is functioning very well. But the need of the time, our is to strengthen Parliament, strengthen legislature, so they continue to wield, they continue to hold proper control over Parliament. So that would be the answer of this question. Now the 5, it says pressure groups play a vital role in influencing public policy making in India. Explain how the business associations contribute to public policies. See, public policies are all the programs, whatever we see, whatever we see, whatever programs are implemented by the government, they are nothing but implementation of public policies. The government may not have access to all sort of reserves and technical inputs. So therefore, the pressure groups in almost all the democracies, including ours, have come to play a very pivotal role in this policy making activities, as well as the policy implementation, at times policy evaluation also. The policy making has got 3 stages. But here the question specifically asks you, what are the roles played by the pressure groups in coming from the business entities. I would just have a look at the question again. The business association, how they influence, what sort of role they play in public policy making activity of India. We have a couple of business association, few examples that you need to write while writing this answer, like the CII, Confederation of Indian Industry, the FICCI, SOCHM. As you know, these are the association which represent a major number of industrial houses, industrial establishment, the interest of the shopkeepers, interest of all those economic stakeholders, and all these things are deliberated and then given to the government. It may refer to the industrial policy, it may refer to many globalization, privatization, liberalization, particular economic decisions, particular stock market, exchanges, the taxation part. So when the government decides to bring about any changes or decides to bring about any amendment in the existing policy or wants to bring a completely new economic policy, all these organizations are consulted. You might have read in many newspapers, just after the budget preparation starts taking place, the government agencies hold discussions, meetings through these pressure groups, through these business association, and accordingly the collective decisions are taken on based upon whatever inputs are given by those industrial organization, industrial association, business associations. So these thoughts, their ideas, if they are good for the nation based upon the deliberation and the likely impact which are they are likely to create, are taken into view while drafting the policy, while drafting the budgetary measures. So these things have to be taken into consideration. Here you have to name certain business or association which are playing a significant role, pivotal role in functioning of democracy in India, in helping the government in forming economic policies, business policies relating to the development of the nation. Now I'll take the question number 6. Besides being a moral imperative of a welfare state, primary health structure is a necessary precondition for sustainable development. Analyze. I would again repeat that this year the questions are very direct. Nobody can deny the importance of primary health structure in a country like ours, where millions of the people don't have any access to the basic healthcare facilities. And the chinks in the armor have been brutally exposed when during this entire pandemic cycle, when the country witnessed so many problems in providing the basic health care. So providing basic health care is not only related only to the health of an individual. Here the question is about the morality. What is the moral of the state? The nature of our state is the welfare state, and the welfareism guarantees that each and every citizens would be provided all kinds of services which can assure a dignified life to the people of this country. And unless and until people are having access to the basic health infrastructure, they would not be able to metamorphose into a complete human being to play a role in the nation's development. For example, like if our primary health care structure is weak, then of course the newly born baby, the infants, the expecting mothers, and our old people, even the young people, those who are staying in countryside, those who are having availing facilities out of this basic structure. So it creates an impact upon each and every aspect of our society. If we have got a healthy population, then they can certainly contribute in a social, cultural, economic, political, in all fields, and the country, they can all become a part of the country's process for development. But if this fact is denied, so firstly, it is antithetical to the welfareism principle, what has been guaranteed to us, even in directive principles of state policy by our constitution makers, and this creates a complete blueprint for our development. So here again, what the UPSC is expecting from all of you, UPSC is expecting all of you to give the right kind of inputs, because the kind of problems which was revealed everywhere during the last phase, because as per the report issued published by the WHO, many our all internal organization, 44% of people still don't have basic access to the basic healthcare facilities. By not being able to provide basic healthcare facilities to the masses, the promises made to those people in our constitution are being reneged, are not being kept up. So this question basically has is having one ethical dimensions also, that besides being a moral imperative of a welfare state, what I have repeatedly answered in a number of my answers today, that a welfare state believes in welfareism, providing all sort of facilities to guarantee a dignified life, and the dignified life cannot come forth unless and until the people are having proper healthcare facilities. The primary health structure is certainly for a sustainable development. Sustainable development. Development is a cumulative process, whether they are contributing in education, agriculture, or industry, or any subsidiary industry, ancillary industries, unless and until our India is fit, they cannot contribute. Of course, the government of India has come up with many breathtaking breakthrough programs, like we have, which trying to create a universalization of healthcare facilities to everyone. And these programs can also be quoted, but without naming any particular politician or any particular political party, because what the government is doing is already enshrined in our DPSP and many other provisions of the Constitution. So this angle has to be taken care of while writing this answer for this question number 6. Question number 7 and question number 8 are very generic answers. Anybody can write and everybody should write. Earn while you learn. A scheme needs to be strengthened to make vocational, educational, and skill training meaningful. Still, we have a provision in Constitution which makes that state shall make arrangements to provide all sort of means of employment, providing vocational and education facilities to economically empower the people. Next question is, can the vicious cycle of gender inequality, poverty, and malnutrition be broken through microfinancing of women self-help groups? Explained with examples. These are very common. So now I'll come to question number 7 and question number 8. These two questions are very direct in nature, and you do not require any specific skill to attempt these questions. Like earn while you learn, scheme needs to be strengthened to make vocational education and skill training meaningful. As you know, it is also mentioned in our constitution that the state shall make attempts to provide sources of employment by providing vocational training, different sort of training programs to economically empower the citizens of this country. This is also mentioned in our constitution. But here it has been seen as per the reports and the surveys that if you are only providing them training without giving them any financial incentives, the number of dropouts are pretty high. So, because most of those who are undergoing these vocational training programs in various institutions, they come from the unprivileged, most of them come from the underprivileged sections of the society. So, the economic survivability is the question. See, if you are undergoing the vocational training programs, all you want to do, you want to have proper employment. If certain incentives are given at the beginning of the vocational training program, the number of dropouts are, of course, going to go down. Probably this was the ideation behind framing of this question. So those who have been struggling for their usual subsistence, when the subsistence becomes so difficult and complicated, it would be very difficult for them to focus on the kind of training they are undergoing. It has also been repeatedly proven in many HRD studies, human resource development studies, that if the persons undergoing training program or working in an organization, if they are not psychologically in a happy space, they would not be able to concentrate. So that leads to the dual loss. Dual loss, firstly, the loss of interest on the part of those who are undergoing the study program. Secondly, because their mind is always focused towards the economic hardship they themselves or their families might be facing. So therefore, it is also being propagated that if we have this vocational training program, while the people are given practical training programs which can also which can also permit them to make or earn money while learning, that turns out to be the most effective measures to improve or strengthen this vocational training program. This is a very generic question. You can attempt these questions by giving certain points. Remember, 150 words. You don't need to repeat the same things time and again. Give the point-wise answers. For an example, like earn while work, undergoing training program, because as per the report and in surveys, the number of dropouts in the vocational training program are higher because of their the economic problem faced by the trainees undergoing those programs. Third point would be that they would be more encouraged or more inclined to learn if certain incentives or if they are given the opportunity to learn. So this way we can complete these answers. The next question, number 8, is also kind of generic in nature. Can the vicious cycle of gender equality, poverty and malnutrition, very noticeable trend here you can see, the socialistic orientation of the constitution, the welfareism of the constitution, the social equity, justice, creating provisions to include everybody within the fold of the society, providing equal opportunity to everyone, giving everybody, all the stakeholders of this country, a proper opportunity, a proper chance, going by different new provisions which have been implemented in many developing countries, even in some of the developed countries, that is called the SHG. Instead of being totally dependent upon the government or its agencies for any kind of development which can take place in their lives, the self-help groups have turned out to be a boon in many societies. You have got a success stories, multiple success stories within our country, in our neighboring countries. Partly the Grameen Bank example is quoted all across the world, where the group of illiterate women came together, they pulled in resources, and how they fought the demons which afflicted them for years, the poverty, malnourishment, stigmatism, existence, and inequality, how they came together and fought all these demons to carve a separate niche of development for themselves. So the importance of self-help groups are to be talked about while framing this answer of these questions. Now we have, in between the polity questions, we have one question coming from international relations, which says, in the last few decades, whereof Asia's growth story, the next few are expected to be of Africa's. in the light of this statement, examine India's influence in Africa in recent years. This African continent has always been friendly to a country like ours, to India. Our ancestors, there have been high skill migration to those countries. Even in pre-independence days, we have many success stories of Indians having migrated to those countries, including Mauritius, and having scripted success stories there. India has always been vocal in providing all sort of economic support to those African nations. Now we have Indo-African Forum, which meets at regular intervals. There are many programs, more than 180 developmental projects in various African countries, which have been financed by Indian government. So the India is now looking forward to create a foothold in African continent. And one very interesting thing that the Indo-African trade has also gone up by more than $60 billion. So these are the certain landmark developments, and India continues to forge ties, build strong relationship with many African countries. There are India is playing a very good foreign policy in terms of strengthening is, because traditionally India tries to keep most of the countries, I would say, in good humor. But there are some hostile neighbors also. India also knows how to handle or how to tackle those hostile countries by creating different sort of measures. There are many, we have a culture of now multilateralism. There are many organizations like the United Nations, WTO, where India can represent all those Latin, Afro Asian countries. India can represent their interest by investing in African continent. India is not only forging strong ties with our traditional allies, at the same time it has been seen recently when there was a huge clamor at the global level in international forums, including UN. It was widely debated that this patenting thing should be done away with, because the African countries and many Asian countries may not have got that much of expertise and the resources to vaccinate their population to fight this pandemic. So when India took up this question, India was hugely supported by African nations. India also provided COVID vaccination to many African countries during the first phase of COVID. So this way, India is trying to extend support to the African nation. In turn, African nations are also supporting India at many international forums, and together, a kind of multiculturalism, multilateralism is being implemented through this process of India building, strengthening ties with African nations. Now, this is the again an international relations question. The USA is facing an existential threat in the form of a China that is much more challenging than the erstwhile Soviet Union. It was debated a lot in international media. As you know, that after the disintegration of USSR, the China has come out to be a most potent force, challenging USA in almost all spheres, be it technology, politically, diplomacy, economics. You might recall this Hawaii episodes, which disrupted the relationship between the United States and China. That China is trying to assert its supremacy through various measures by creating the economic superiority. China is giving a tough competition to USA in many fields as compared to Russia, which seems to have taken receded into a different background as compared to the earlier position what Russia used to hold. So in terms of economy, in terms of cyber security, in terms of the diplomacy, in terms of nuclear power, all these things, China is putting a great deal of competition to United States of America. It has been repeatedly stated by the current American President Joe Biden that this is going to be the conflict. This century is going to be a century of conflict with China, because China is turning out to be a big, potent, rather menacing force. You can understand the assertiveness and the clout that China exercises, that despite the huge hue and cry at global level and clamor, the China did not admit that this coronavirus was leaked out of its lab. So I am no authority to say that has exactly happened. But going by the research, going by the news which is floating around, going by the publications that what we get to see on international media, I have also had interaction with many persons, scientists. There is a possibility, but the China, because of its economic clout, did not allow even the countries, bigger countries, European nations, many international organizations to even inspect those sites. And even when the ex-US president started calling this as a Chinese virus, he was also snubbed by the Chinese, and ultimately this was also done away with. Another is the China is also challenging USA in South China Sea. China is also trying to prove to United States of America that Taiwan is automatically one day going to be subsumed by them. It would be united with the mainland. So the whatever support the America is extending to Taiwan would not be tolerated. So this way, the China is turning out to be a very strong, potent force which is asserting itself at almost all the forums. Uh, Maybe it may happen that we may have this right now, this bipolar world, multipolar world, all these concepts are no longer debated. But the way the China is surging ahead, the growth, the development of China as compared to United States are certainly unprecedented. They have a huge manpower. I'm no supporter of Chinese, but I'm saying you that what is the nature of the question? What should your answer be? This is the high time all those developing nations which believe in the foundations and the edifice of democracy must come together, support the strongest democratic country of the world like United States of America to at least counter the effect of China, the way it is spreading. Moreover, the worst part of it, the China is an authoritarian state. It doesn't talk about there are huge human right violations. There are rules relating to labor laws are frequently violated and tossed around. So we cannot allow the China to fool around with all sort of international security concerns. So there is no denying the fact that China has turned out to be a big, unrivaled challenge to United States of America. So the next question again, we it falls back on polity, but it's again a very small incident which happened. If I can quote the state where the firstly I would read aloud the question: the jurisdiction of the CBI regarding lodging an FIR and conducting probe within a particular state is being questioned by various states. However, the power of the states to withhold consent to the CBI is not absolute. Explain with special reference to federal character of India. The one very noticeable trend this year's paper is that a lot of talk about the welfareism and the states welfare related activities. A lot of talk about the strengthening the federal structure, whether it is political federalism or the fiscal federalism. You can see there is a trend in almost all the questions. Now, this says that if I can recall it well, it happened in West Bengal when the CBI, having been informed of a number of episodes with gory details which took place in the aftermath of a particular party winning the elections in West Bengal. The CBI went there, lodged several FIRs, but the state government was not willing to permit them uh, to do their questioning and to do the work what is done by CBI. So this matter went up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court saying that the CBI does not actually require specific permission in those cases which are having far-reaching impact beyond the boundaries of the state, like those provisions which are mentioned in the union list. The CBI can register FIR and conduct its proceedings, and it does not require any specific consent and approval of the state. So again, the federal structure, how the center-state relationship are undergoing a tumultuous phase. This has to be written in this question. Second is about this is again a very generic question. Through the human rights commissions have contributed immensely to the protection of human rights in India, yet they have failed to assert themselves against the mighty and powerful. Analyzing their structural and practical limitations suggests remedial features. See, the National Human Rights Commission and the State Human Rights Commission, they have been doing a kind of good job, but there are some deficiencies, there are some structural limitations, what I can recall here. Firstly, the it's of decision is of recommendatory nature. It doesn't have its independent investigating agency. It doesn't have the power to punish. So unless and until they are given the teeth, suppose there is some custodial death taking place in a state, the person goes and moves to the National Human Rights Commission. National Human Rights Commission would issue a notice to the same concerned state which is accused to have violated the human rights of the particular aggrieved person. Unless and until they are having their independent investigating machinery, unless and until they are given the power to pass judgments, unless and until it is not considered a dumping ground for the retired judges, this would not turn out to be an effective institution, what was envisaged when the National Human Rights Commission were brought into effect. Next, we have this analyze the distinguishing feature of the notion of the right to equality in the Constitution of the USA and India. So now the next question that we have, analyze the distinguishing features of the notion of right to equality in the constitutions of the United States and India. The Article 14, the right to equality. So what are the distinguishing features between this the Constitution of United States of America and India? Few things that I can recall here, that this right to equality the became came from the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. It was added as a part of the amendment to the US Constitution, whereas as compared to the US institution, our fundamental rights, though having borrowed from the United States Constitution, it was originally intended to be a part of the Constitution. This is the one distinguishing thing what I can recall here. Secondly, our fundamental rights come with reasonable restrictions, whereas their fundamental rights are kind of absolute, though the reasonable restrictions are not mentioned in the Constitution, but on case to case basis, their courts can decide to impose the reasonable restrictions. Another feature, the right to property has been done away with in our Constitution, but the right to property is still a major right in American Constitution. So now we have this Article 21, which says in India, no person shall be deprived of his life and personal liberty except by the procedure established by law. It means if there is a procedure established by law, the person can be deprived of his life and personal liberty, though there are reasonable restrictions on that, that any law which is depriving a person of life and personal liberty has to meet the due process of law, reasonable just restrictions and everything. But this provision, as my memory goes, is also not there in United States Constitution. Then the power of media, that comes as an implied freedom of press. So I say the freedom of press is an implied power also given through a number of judgments by Supreme Court, but that is categorically mentioned in the US Constitution. One more example, if I can recall, that their rights also include the right to carry firearms, which would never be given to us when we don't need to carry the guns. There are many gun episodes happening every day in the United States of America. So these are some of the basic differences. Both the countries guarantee their citizens through Bill of Rights and fundamental rights, the basic fundamental rights which are needed to lead a dignified life. And we have to provide the basic features which distinguish between the two types of rights between the US and American, US and Indian Constitution. Now we have this explain the constitutional provisions under which particular legislative councils are established. This is again a very direct questions, as you know that legislative councils are existing only in 6 of the states. If Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, UP, Bihar, Andhra Pradesh I have already mentioned. So these are the legislative councils. It's like you can say the upper house of state legislature. And there is a provision that if a state legislative assembly passes a bill by special majority, the parliament can create a legislative council for those states. So far, only 6 states have had this, and legislative councils are not given that much of power and authority. There are certain critical aspects of this, like those who lose elections in legislative assemblies elections, they are accommodated in legislative councils, and they don't have any power like money bills or many special provisions what are given to Rajya Sabha. So therefore, as far as the effectiveness of these councils are concerned, I don't see much effectiveness of these councils. And out of 28 states, only 6 are having it. So this is a very simple question. Doesn't require much analysis. Okay, so explain the constitutional provisions. Now, again, we have this departmental related parliamentary standing committees keep the administration on its toes and inspire reverence for parliamentary control. Basically, this is the second part of the question which has already been asked about the legislative control over executive. So here, a specific branch of department-related parliamentary standing committees. Uh, the talking about the effectiveness, up to what extent these committees are exercising effective control over the executive. As you know that we are having 17 parliamentary committees consisting of 45 members, 30 coming from Lok Sabha and 15 from Rajya Sabha, and ministry wise, department wise, they have been divided. So since there are 45 parliamentarians involved there, each and everything relating to them, the policy making, policy formulation, policy implementation, bill related activities, budgetary provisions, grants, cut, and everything are being discussed by them. And again, they have been working quite well as compared to many committees. This department related parliamentary standing committees are really working very effectively, because all those related bills are referred to them, and since it has got the representation from both houses of parliament, the things are elaborately discussed and deliberated upon. So as compared to other committees like public accounts committee, standing estimates committee, and committee on public undertakings, these departmental standing committees are working quite well and playing a complete role over checking executive from any kind of high-handedness and exceeding the limits what legislature prescribes them. So the same answers you can also add what has already been discussed in the previous question regarding this parliamentary control over executive, that the members may not have that much of time, technical expertise, and know how to know each and everything relating to that particular bill what is referred to them. So besides that, they are functioning quite well. Next question is, has digital illiteracy, particularly in rural areas, coupled with lack of information and communication technology, accessibility, hindered socio-economic development, examined with justification? This seems to be coming from when overnight the country had to go from offline learning to online learning. There is a concept of digital divide. The people who are having access to those digital world, and those who are on at the periphery, not able to capitalize on the digital revolution that was seen during COVID, when all of a sudden all schools were closed and the schools had to shift from offline to online education. But in many areas where there was a poor network connections, poor connectivity, more poor, kids coming from the poor families do not have access to mobile tablets or gadgets. This way, that again created a chain of deprivation and frustration amongst those, because already there are two Indias: the India haves India, have nots India, the advantage and the disadvantage of some society. When the whole constitution and the policymakers are talking about to bring about the social equality and social equity with equal preference and preponderance of justice and fairness, these things would not be forthcoming unless and until the attempts are being made to bridge that digital divide. This fact has to be stressed upon while writing this answer about it, that digital illiteracy coupled with lack of information and communication. See, right now we are living in a phase of asymmetrical flow of information. On one hand, we are having super information highways. On the other hand, people are not having the basic electricity. Forget about proper internet connections, computerization. So though the things are developing, but there are many places, there are many pockets in India where this communication ICT technology have not yet penetrated into those areas. The real-time information relating to economy, agriculture, the seeds, the governance, the local governance, various sort of formats and the cards, the documents, all of them are supposed to carry. More the people living in countryside may not have access to them as compared to their urban counterpart. So therefore, this is the high time the digital divide has to be bridged. Of course, because of this asymmetrical pattern of development as far as this ICT is concerned, the development is turning out to be a skewed one, but the efforts, unrelenting efforts, should be taken to bridge the gap. Next question is about though women in post-independent India have excelled in various fields, the social attitude towards women and feminist movement have been patriarchal. Apart from women education and women empowerment, what intervention can help change the milieu? See, this is a social, cultural dilemma that the country like ours is facing, because the women have to battle, they fight different kind of battles at all levels, right from their childhood. Different sort of structures, different societies. Within the societies, within India, there are many different kinds of Indias where the women are treated differently. One section, the women are given all sort of freedom to go for the top education, and many parts of the country, women are still not given access to the primary education. So the attitude has been patriarchal. It has got its roots in many social, cultural, ethical kinds of things. But of late, the societies are changing. Here, the question is that besides providing education to women and various empowerment schemes that the government keeps launching to empower the women, what other interventions you can suggest? In my opinion, the best thing would be to go for the value-based education, the awareness campaigns, programs involving incentives, sensitizations, and tough measures to tackle violence against women. The tough measures to ensure that nothing like this dowry, which disempowers women, are removed from the society. So some more methods, logical methods, what you can suggest, you can provide that though the government has been coming up with many landmark schemes and programs, but still the desired results are yet to come. So gradually, when we go for the value-based education, trying to create a belief pattern, a thought pattern involving everybody, then providing equal protection, uh, providing special protection to the girl child, ensuring that the dropouts amongst the girl go down, empowering the local government, giving more number of seats to the women. Things have started happening. So if these things are implemented collectively, the days are not far when our country would progress with women contributing significantly for national development. Next question is about can civil society and non-governmental organization present an alternate model of public service delivery to benefit the common citizens? See, in a country of vast magnitude like ours, NGOs and civil society are certainly playing a big role. But being totally dependent upon them would not be a good idea, because this could be one of the models, but this cannot be an alternate model as compared to the public service delivery system. Going by the vastness of this, and moreover, the kind of commitment that the state has got because of its ideals of welfareism, the NGOs may not have that much of incentives. Moreover, NGOs, non-governmental organization, may not have that resources. It has also been seen recently when the government clamped upon certain NGOs. It was found that many NGOs were running only on papers, and they were getting all sorts of contributions through foreign sources and indulging into those activities which was not desired from them. So our country is very vast. The public policy model requires the major role to be played by the state agencies, and of course, the civil society can continue to play, and the NGOs continue to play a supplementary role towards the nation development. But I would not advise, I would not support that if they are given treated as an alternate, they would never be able to replace the state or its agencies. So, my dear friend, these are some of the basic questions, the basic inputs which I wanted to discuss it with you. One thing is again very noticeable. These are the current development paradigms that those who are about to appear in the years to come, they must take note of this fact that their preparation must involve day-to-day news reading, analysis of those newspapers, and trying to find an alignment of those topics with our constitutional provisions. And if we start, if our train our mind in such a way, the handling the papers of such questions would not be pose any kind of difficulty to the students. So thanks a lot for listening to me. This is Vikash Mishra signing off. See you some other day.